Welcome to the New Thinking for a New World podcast, where we explore the most pressing issues that are challenging and changing our societies. We are looking for new thinking and new solutions wherever we can find them. Listen as host Alan Stoga, the Talberg Foundation's chairman, challenges his guests for analysis, ideas, and actions. Together, we can help make our world at least a bit better.
One of the unexpected consequences of the pandemic was the realization that global food supply chains are fragile and easily disrupted. Worldwide economic, social, and trade dislocations led to food shortages, distribution problems, hunger, and malnutrition. What should that tell us, not just about today, but about the underlying realities? In a world where climate change and rapid population growth are squeezing agriculture production and productivity, how can we produce enough food, enough protein, to meet humanity's growing needs and wants? What can technology do? Do we need to take the center point of the production process from the farm or the sea into the laboratory? My guest today has practical answers to those questions. Didier Toubia is co-founder and CEO of Aleph Farms, a company based in Israel that grows steaks from cow cells. Think high-tech meets the barbecue. Welcome, Didier.
Hi, good to meet you and nice to be with you today.
Let's start with the punchline. Why do you think that the traditional agricultural process, cow to steak to barbecue, needs to change?
We see today a meat production which relies in very large part on industrial agricultural practices like feedlots or factory farms, which are associated with public health question marks, which might be related to either resistance to antibiotics or the development of different types of diseases, either for the animal itself, like African swine fever and avian flu, or zoonotic diseases which might be transferred to humans. But we also see more and more concerns among the wider consumer segments about the animal welfare considerations associated with the concentrated operations for animal farming. And last but not least, the global food ecosystem today is responsible for 26% of the greenhouse gas emissions, and 15 out of those 26% are related to livestock farming. Producing meat is one of the most expensive value proposition in terms of food, and not only as far as natural resources are concerned, like land and water, but also in terms of greenhouse gases. Today we have we're using 1.7 times the resources planet Earth puts at our disposal, and we really needed to change the way we produce our food if we want to preserve the planet for the future generations.
So there's a lot of things wrong with the existing industrial scale production of meat. What is it? How does cultivated meat solve those problems? On the negative side, and what are the positives from your perspective of cultivated meat?
Cultivated meat is about producing the same meat from the ground up by using the same cells which compose the meat, which develops spontaneously within the body of a cow, and reproducing the cells outside of the animal's body and arranging them in a way which reproduces the structure and the texture of the steak. So we're actually producing the meat directly from its building blocks, instead of waiting for 2, 3, sometimes 4 years or more for the meat to form within the animal's body, then to slaughter the animal and harvest the meat from its carcass. So it's a new way to produce meat, which is much more efficient in terms of resource utilization. We use between 92 and 98% less of land, of water. We emit 92% less greenhouse gases and carbon emissions. But we also avoid the use of antibiotics, and the meat grows in a closed system, meaning with no possibilities for contaminations like E. coli, Listeria, or others. And last but not least, We avoid all the animal welfare concerns associated with concentrated operations for farming.
The technology of growing stem cells, of growing meat in vitro, is well established and well tested. And you've just described some of the advantages. What are the biggest impediments to production at scale?
The technologies on which we rely have been originally developed for regenerative medicine, for medical applications, with different requirements in terms of functionality of the products, in terms of cost, of inputs, of scale. And so we really need to reinvent the way we can produce muscle tissues in our case, which are actually steaks at large scale, and drive the cost down so that this product would be relevant in the food sector. So the challenges are primarily related to finding out the right technologies which can be applicable to a large scale cultivation of meat at a cost which would be low enough in order for the product to be relevant in the marketplace.
If I understand what you just said, the technology to produce cultivated meat exists, but the technology to produce it efficiently at scale still requires further invention, further innovation. Is that the case?
Yes, that's the case. There will be economies of scale with the cultivated meat, and the cost originally will be relatively expensive and will go down as we increase the production capabilities. Same as many other innovations, such as, I don't know, EVs or batteries for electric vehicles, same as solar panels, which have been originally relatively expensive and are now competing with the fossil fuel, or even digital cameras, which were very expensive originally, and now we can find one in any smartphone. Cultivated meat will follow the same path. But beyond scale, we also need to innovate on the production platform itself. At Aleph Farms, we have developed 5 different modules and a unique formulation for the growth medium, which is the feed to the cells. We directly feed the cells instead of feeding the animal, which then digests the feed and breaks down the nutrients so that they're brought to the cells by the blood. So we kind of shortcut the feed. And one of the challenges is to reproduce the same environment for the cells as seen within the animal's body. And we have achieved a very good outcome with that. We have developed our own processes for making the cells the division more efficient, for them to grow more efficiently. We have developed our own cultivator, which is the equipment in which the cells grow, and to make the technology suitable for mass cultivation of steaks. So we also need a deep tech innovation, combination of scale and innovation.
It's impossible to predict. That's why it's fun to ask the next question. What is the timeline in your mind? When do you think those problems you've just identified will be solved?
We see first products coming to the market as we speak. There has been a first regulatory approval for a cultivated meat product in Singapore in December last year, 2020. And there are other companies working on approvals in the US, in Singapore, in different parts of the world. I believe that within the course of the next couple of years, we'll see 5, 6, 7 products being launched. Those products will still be marketed at relatively small capacities. I believe it will take 3 to 5 more years to really reach large scale production and to reach a stage where cultivated meat becomes mainstream. And so to your question, I believe that we start seeing first products coming to market, but at small scale. We don't expect cultivated meat to be available on each, supermarket or grocery store's shelf before 2025, 2028.
What product actually has come to market in Singapore?
Mm-hmm. Many companies are going for simple products and kind of low-hanging fruits, like just cultivating cells and then harvesting them from the cultivator and blending those cells with other ingredients to make a processed food product. And at Aleph Farms, we actually go for a different strategy. We walk a different path. We focus on quality meat and quality food. We're the first company which has successfully grown a steak thin-cut beef steak at the end of 2018, and almost 2 years ago, which is a first platform we have since then developed into a commercial product, which we were in the process of transferring to production. So we'll see different types of products. The first products commercialized will hopefully be simpler. The reason why Aleph Farms is focusing on quality meat is because, in our views, meat is not just a protein. Meat is an experience. Meat relies on the three dimensions of quality: the sensory quality, of course, meaning taste, flavor, texture, but also the culinary quality, how it cooks, which is a big limitation of plant-based meat analogs, for instance. And last but not least, nutritional quality. And what we do at Aleph Farms is really to look at our meat as an experience, an emotional product, and we really want to make sure that we deliver what the meat really means for the consumers. That will be key in our mind for driving long-term consumer acceptance.
One of the issues floating around the sector is cell line engineering. That is to say, the possibility of genetic engineering to make a better product, similar to what's happened in the production of corn or of wheat or of soybeans, where you've had genetic engineering to produce products that are more resistant, or strains that are more resistant to disease, more resistant to pests. How do you think about cell line engineering in your space?
There are different approaches we've seen implemented in this emerging industry so far. Some companies are genetically engineering their cells to get quicker to the scale they need, and to make the cells more suitable for getting to the market in a shorter amount of time, or modifying their cells through what is called immortalization. What we decided to do at Aleph Farms is really to stick to the natural cells, not to modify the cells. Even through this path is more challenging and requires more resources and probably more time to get to market. We expect having the first product released in a soft launch toward the end of next year, end of 2022. But again, we believe that at the end of the day, what's more important than time to market is time to acceptance. We have to make sure that we deliver a product which would meet the consumer expectations. And based on many market surveys we have performed in the US, but also in the UK, in France, Germany, Japan, Brazil, we know that being non-genetically engineered will be important for driving acceptance.
The distinction between genetically modified food and non-genetically modified food is an important one in terms of consumer acceptance. More broadly, I've seen a lot of polls that suggest people are, in fact, open to cultivated meat. I'm not sure they've quite thought through yet the distinction between genetically, non-genetically modified, but a bit like the introduction of the Impossible Burger at the fast food chains, I would imagine that people will consume good quality when you produce it, regardless of how you produce it. Is that a fair assumption?
We do see a huge difference in expected acceptance between genetically engineered meat and non-genetically engineered meat, especially in Europe, including in the UK. In France, for instance, the acceptance for GMO or genetically engineered meat is cultivated meat would be only 27%, while non-genetically engineered meat would benefit from 89% acceptance. So huge difference. It's true that in the US, the awareness or the concerns about genetic engineering are not that prominent as in Europe. So again, I think at the end of the day, it will be very much cultural. On the consumer side, there will also be some differences on the regulatory path side. For instance, in the US, the USDA and FDA, to the best of our knowledge, are not really making a big deal of genetic engineering. In Europe, for instance, marketing a genetically engineered cultivated meat would require a completely different regulatory path. And in many other countries, including in Asia, there would be also significant differences in the resources required to take those products to the market. So we believe it's an advantage. There is, of course, room in the market for other types of approaches than we are implementing. But we believe it's a strong differentiator.
You are one of the pioneers of a new space, and I suspect that the existing regulatory framework in the major industrial countries is not really ready for what you guys are doing. What are the regulatory challenges? To what extent do you need to educate the regulators?
Actually, in the US, the USDA and FDA, especially the FDA, have been very proactive, reaching out to the industry with the public meetings as early as 2018, and you know, calling for all the stakeholders to come and share their thoughts, their plans, and they've been very keen on learning this new approach for producing meat. And we've seen similar approaches in other countries like Singapore, for instance, in Asia, which has been the first country to clear cultivated meat for marketing last year. And so it really depends on the countries and the jurisdictions. In Europe, for instance, there is no framework for pre-submission meetings, meaning that the EFSA, which is responsible for regulating novel foods in Europe, can't really reach out to the companies, and companies can't really reach out to them prior to the actual submission of the application. So it makes the education process a bit more challenging. But overall, I think that the regulatory authorities are very keen on learning about it, because cultivated meat, in our views at least, can bring a lot of benefits in terms of traceability. We do see the meat industry investing a lot today in improving the transparency of the supply chain, and cultivated meat is actually 100% transparent and traceable inherently. We can also avoid contaminations in meat, and even through the very very large majority of the steaks we can purchase today are clean. Still 22% of the Americans dying every year from foodborne illnesses die from eating meat. And that's why there are some strict requirements for cooking the meat at a relatively high temperature. On top of that, we can also reduce the use of antibiotics in animal farming drastically. The USDA has banned the use of antibiotics for prophylactic uses since 2017, if I'm not wrong. But still, over 50% of the farms are using antibiotics in the farming process in the US. And this massive usage of antibiotics is one of the key drivers for the development of resistances, which then cause a significant public health issue on the human side. So for all those reasons, I believe the regulatory agencies do see the benefits and are interested to see more production systems available in the ecosystem.
If you feel that the world lacks global leaders, please help support the Talberg Foundation programs. Individual donations are being accepted at talbergfoundation.org/donate. That's TALLBERG foundation.org/donate.
As this industry, as your work continues to evolve, what do you imagine the global supply chain is going to look like? Is this locally produced, locally distributed? Is this locally produced, globally distributed?
First, I believe that we will see the emergence of cultivated meat as a new category of meat, same as we have white wine and red wine, which are two different types of wines, which are coexisting in the market and share the same basic characteristics of being wine, but still have slightly different attributes and value propositions. We believe that we'll have two categories of meat: conventional meat, harvested from the carcass of a slaughtered animal. And we do see this category reverting to more regenerative and extensive production processes, and that there is a strong trend toward more organic grass-fed beef on one hand, but also a strong push from the big companies. Cargill, for instance, has committed to revert 10 million acres to regenerative farming in the US by 2030. PepsiCo, 7 million acres in Europe, for instance. The European Commission is calling for increasing the organic food production from 7 to 20% of the total food produced every year. And so there is a strong push toward regenerative agriculture. And in parallel, we do see cultivated meat as a better alternative to industrial farming, which represents today 70% of the global meat production. And so we'll see cultivated meat being the mainstream product, and conventional meat being more kind of meat for special occasions. And cultivated meat will bring specific values, not only in terms of sustainability, animal welfare, or public health. It can also bring other benefits in terms of customization and tailorization, of standardization of the meat for the food service, and personalized nutrition. It can really bring a lot of unique values which conventional meat can't. So they will not necessarily be interchangeable. That's why we are talking about two different categories. And cultivated meat, in our views, has a big difference, is showing a big difference with the conventional meat production, is that we can produce meat anytime and anywhere. Cultivated meat does not rely on the availability of local natural resources such as land and water, and can also be produced under any climate. And today, the beef production and meat in general relies a lot on imports and remote production. And there are some parts of the world which are producing excess of meat, some parts which are importing meat. For instance, China has imported 90% of its beef, Japan 65%, Singapore 100%. And we believe that cultivated meat can provide a great benefit in terms of food security, producing the meat locally with the short supply chain, resistant to crisis, and much more resilient, but also resistant to climate change, while empowering the local communities, keeping the value creation within the community, and providing the right amount of nutrition and quality food to the people who need it when they need it. The big vision of Aleph Farms is to provide high quality nutrition for anyone, anytime, and anywhere.
You're also, I know, thinking about producing meat in space for space travel. Can you talk a little bit about your vision and why Aleph is thinking not just about the planet Earth, but about other planets?
Yes, we do see our space program named Aleph Zero as a kind of Formula One team, same as car manufacturers would have a Formula One team where they would test and develop new technologies, new materials for the to be validated in the toughest environments, and then once validated would transfer them into the day-to-day car. For us, space is a way to push forward our vision for this unconditional and secure access to high quality nutrition for anyone, anytime, and anywhere. In space, you have the scarcest possible environment. You have virtually zero natural resources. You need to implement circular production systems and recycling everything. From our standpoint, once we'll be able to produce meat on the moon, we'll be able to produce meat in the center of the Sahara or in the Antarctic, meaning anytime, anywhere. And that's really part of our vision for Aleph Farms. This focus on food security is not only important for making sure that we tackle the malnutrition issue and fix the global food system. Today, the food system is not built for feeding the people. I believe it's clear for you. I mean, the facts show that we throw away 30% of the food we produce annually on the global basis, while close to 900 million people don't have enough food. So it clearly shows that the food system is not intended to feed the people. It's intended to optimize production and profit. We need to fix this global food system with a decentralized production close to the consumer, food produced when and where produced, reducing waste, and make sure that we can fix that. But beyond that, the fixing the food system has also a great impact on social equality and on global stability. The food insecurity is one of the primary drivers for political tensions, water and food. Climate change will accentuate those tensions, and if we don't fix the food system and make it resilient to climate change and independent local resources, we will face more and more tensions and climate change migrations, wars, which will primarily hurt the poorest and the weakest. And again, the richest will be preserved, as in any war. And so we do see the food system as a cornerstone of the long-term global stability. And that's an explanation on the reason why food security is that important for us. If we come back to space, beyond pushing our vision forward, as you know today, the big limitation for colonies in space are related to the inability to produce food locally. You can't farm animals on the moon because, of course, you don't have the food, the climate. You have little of water, of course, on the moon, but not much. And so, if you'd like people to live on the moon or to live on Mars, you can't just rely on shipping food every time. It will be too expensive. We need to be able to develop new production systems for local production. And the work Aleph Farms is doing is really focusing on solving one of the big bottlenecks of human colonies in the outer space.
I love the idea that if you can produce meat on Mars, you can produce meat in the Sahara. And that certainly would go, as you said a moment ago, a long way towards actually getting food to the people that don't have food, as opposed to just one more alternative to those of us who live in industrial countries and in the main have, even if it's inefficient and ineffective, in the main have enough supply. Let me end with one question. If you had a magic wand and could wave it, what would you wish for to accelerate this process? How do you get all of this done faster, more efficiently, more effectively?
I think that the big challenge for a company like Aleph Farms and the other companies in the space is to scale up quickly and being able to quickly build large and efficient cultivation facilities in order to meet the demand on one hand, but also to drive the cost down. As I said, there will be economies of scale at play. And so if I could have a magical wand, I would just wish for 10 large-scale production facilities being built instantly in our key markets, and that would be great.
Well, it's a magic wand I think we should all hope that you find, because clearly, for all of the reasons you've described, success, not just as a business, but as a concept, is important to mankind. So thank you very much for this conversation. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to meeting one of your steaks, hopefully either in a restaurant soon, or I'll come to Israel and have a bite.
Thanks for having me. Bon appetit, and wishing you, Alan, and the audience a good day.
Thank you for joining us. Please rate our show on Apple Podcast and subscribe. Meanwhile, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or you can subscribe to our newsletter at talbergfoundation.org to learn more about our work. That's TALLBERG foundation.org. Thank you, and we'll be back again next week for another episode of Talberg's New Thinking for a New World. This podcast was brought to you through the generous support of SNF, the Stavros Niarchos Foundation.